Well, that's the thing. Gary, you might disagree with that because you've got SOA in your job title.
Well, again, so service owner, I very much agree with the fact that it's an approach, it's a mindset, it's a method, and it's a combination of various things that help you deliver that method. So a combination of products, technologies, tools, and standards that allow us to get to a point of resilience in a discussion. But you're right, it's about, unless those change, any IT change, whether it's SOA bounded or not, has got to be linked to a business outcome, and it's got to be measured as so. And so there's no SOA police that's going to come along and beat the IT department on the head, or indeed the business analyst on the head. It's just a very useful way of thinking about trying to find a common language around services that are meaningful for business. That's the way I approach it, and that's the discussion that we kind of major on. And indeed, it does absolutely do that. It does demonstrate to both parties in the organisation that if you can agree that this customer credit check is the service that's important to pensions in your FSS organisation, that's the thing we want to try and improve and model and be more agile. That's what you will build.
So starting as small as that.
Yeah, and the granularity is the key component about keeping the scope in a managed and controlled way. And this thing around throttling is that we typically talk in terms of maybe 30 to 40 core business level services, not hundreds and thousands of IT level service operations and web services. It's about what are the 20, 30 or 40 or so key business services that we want to aggregate, we want to reuse, we want to profile and optimize that are going to really drive value. Okay. And that's the one that we need to work on.
I'm sure that the phrase paralysis by analysis is very familiar to a lot of our listeners out there.
That's your job. We need to move on because there's a couple of great questions here and I want to make sure you answer them.
This doesn't make it any less challenging. That it's not a thing, it's a mindset change. Mindset changes are very difficult, as you know. There are 3 things that dropped out of research that we've done around this in terms of organisations that get this stuff better than other organisations. They're on the slide. It's this proactive attitude to change. It's IT as an enabler. It's having business already bought into the thing, so IT sort of can join in some way. That gives you a bit of a way forward. So we're not underestimating that this is difficult. We're just saying, if you want to get there, this is the kind of journey you're going to have to get on.
The journey you follow.
And I think importantly, and this came out of the same research, the point I want to make just talking around this chart is that the top 2 bars aren't that different in terms of we've got these kind of wonderfully organised IT departments and brilliant CIOs that everyone else aspires to be. We call them celebrity CIOs, those sort that you read about in the CIO magazine. They're kind of, oh God, I wish I could do it like that. And they're like your mate that's fit, that's bright, that passes all their exams and can play squash and thrash everybody. The fact is that we're not trying to get people to look like that because it would be impossible and it wouldn't be our job. What we are trying to do is say it's that bottom bar you don't want to be in. You don't want to be the kind of organisation or the organisation or sub-part of the organisation that is causing the problems here. You don't want to be the fragmented one. You don't want to be the firefighters, etc., etc. And the goal is to get people into that middle bar, essentially. Not everyone's going to be the kind of celebrity IT organisation, but that middle bar is absolutely open.
It's more important to get the bottom bar up to the middle than to spend a lot of effort.
Absolutely, and this applies just as much for being oriented around services as it does for being good at business process, as being collaborative. We get this same picture every single time. I could have put up any one of 10 charts on this particular one.
Yeah.
So again, this is the kind of real world example I was talking about. So this is a well-known telco in the UK, satellite broadcast provider, where
that narrows it down.
That narrows it down very nicely. And again, so they talk very eloquently about this, how they manage business process. So highly agile organisation, growing very quickly, very innovative in terms of its business model. So you may have a core business process end to end. In this case, managing a new subscriber, new customer, essentially to your services, and you've got to recognise that you've got new service providers, new content providers, new geographies, different technologies to get out to the endpoint. I read in the paper last week about the innovation to put online gaming down the broadband pipe as the next kind of content provision that they want to put forward to the screen. So my point is, and you've got different service levels to support for gold, silver, bronze, different types of customers, etc., etc. The point is, lots and lots of change. And if you want to genuinely be innovative, this is an example of a company that's basically saying, I've got my mainline business process for managing my new digital subscriber, but I need all this variability to be properly managed, properly controlled, properly auditable, properly financed, so I can actually invest in new content and new technology and new innovation, because you're driving a business process and an environment as an IT function that can support that real-world type of environment. So that's a very good example of an industry that's rapidly changing, that has by its very nature to be innovative in terms of how it uses technology. And it's really around taking control of that process in the middle and controlling that properly.
This is a fairly new company, though. They don't have, they started off in a technological, digital environment.
So I accept where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And so bit-based industries like telcos, the guys are not moving atoms. If you're building cars, yes, you've got a different challenge in terms of how you innovate the production line of building a car. If you're dealing with bits flying over a network, it's different. I accept that proposition. But actually, they're still connecting with partners that have all that kind of issues around how you exchange data. They may be using old techniques like EDI or other types of integration technology. But the process, the unit of work whereby you interact and collaborate and interconnect needs to be governed and controlled. And so there's heterogeneity in the entire network, not just for the internal.
But hang on as well. I mean, I've worked for a bit-based organisation as a consultant various times. I'm sure loads of people out there have. Just because it's a modern organisation or a modern that doesn't mean that they work in a modern way. They have the same old traditional problems that everyone else. It's the same old folks that are running them that have come straight from a very old.
Yeah, and a case in point, that the physics of actually putting the satellite dish on the roof of somebody's house requires some business process around organising delivery time, getting the worker schedule organised, getting him in the car, driving through the snow. His GPS telling him he's broken down or he's stuck in traffic, renegotiating delivery times. There's lots of process around what events occur in the real world that are actually trying to be managed. And I think, again, service orientation is a device, along with controlled business process and collaboration, that allows you to be much more creative in managing, in that case, customer satisfaction in terms of a delivery promise, for example.
And that does link into one of the other questions we've got as well, which is it's not what's happening now, it's the what's next. Mm-hmm. And that's a very big issue is for people at a more senior position in any size of organisation, being able to go to the board and say, this sort of thing is starting to happen. If we can either take advantage of it to save ourselves money or to reduce risk, or there's a big compliance thing around the corner, or actually it's going to help us reach into new markets, etc., etc. It's very hard to get a handle on that and explain it to the board, because we talk about the board. It's a bunch of folks that are getting on with their jobs. They've got to be convinced in a very compelling way that these things are going to make a difference. Otherwise, they're just going to go, yeah, whatever, tell me about it when it's real. Yeah. So
and also, traditionally, the split of expertise has been the board has been the people who are looking ahead to the next business problem, and the IT department are the people that have been putting the systems in place that make that possible. And we're saying here that there's an element the IT department has to take up the running on that, and to start looking ahead like that, that's a lot of work.
And the boardroom has to create the conditions where, as I said before, that there's no kind of differential, or different juxtaposition between the business and IT. They've got to be working together. And if the smart boardroom's clear about its intention, they'll encourage that behaviour.
Mm-hmm. I think the bottom line for that question, which I do want to answer, was, is there any advice you can give me?
Yes.
I think the key word to me in all of this is the trust one. There is no simple way of going to the board and saying, right, we got all this sorted, off we go, you can trust me. That's got to be built, that trust and respect and so on has got to be built over time. I would say to that reader, please do contact us offline, because it's a very big subject of how to build that trust. I'll send you a book, mate, all right? And anyone else that wants one, up to 2. We wrote a book called The Technology Garden, talking to CIOs across 40 organisations and said, how do you make this work? And we put it all into the 6 Habits of Highly Effective CIOs kind of book. So if you want an advice, then have a look at that.
How many books are you going to offer?
3.
3. So we've got one counted for. The next 2 comments to come in asking for one, we'll get it. Yeah, we'll get a book from Jon.